And away we go. Episode 1233 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Wednesday, January 7th, 2026, the day after a major coaching staff shakeup for the Washington Commanders. The team on Tuesday parted with offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury, offensive line coach Bobby Johnson, and defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. A coaching staff purge for our team of it going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season. Kingsbury gone, Johnson gone, Whitt gone. Hello and welcome to this Wednesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast, on which we talk Commanders on every episode, no matter the time of year. A new episode each weekday, with each episode out by 5 a.m. Eastern, and often much earlier than that. This also is a podcast on which we don't waste your time with frivolous conversation, inane banter, and so off a big news day as Tuesday was, so we get into this installment of the podcast quickly and with purpose. Next segment, in-depth reaction to and analysis of the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury, Bobby Johnson, and Joe Whitt, with a heavy emphasis on this Kingsbury situation. What the heck happened? What might General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn be thinking? We already have a report on what Commanders players are thinking and who might be next as offensive coordinator. Also on the show, I'll talk Washington Wizards. How about our Wizards?
Now McCullum across the timeline. I don't think the Magic are going to foul, and the Wizards are going to win. They backed it up. They said they were better than Sunday against Minnesota, and they backed it up. Well, let's get on the bus. Let's get out of here. Let's go to Philadelphia. 120-112. Wizards win over the Orlando Magic tonight. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yes, it is. Dave Johnson on the Washington Wizards radio network. Are rebuilding and tanking Wizards. They now are 7-5 over their last 12 games. A 120-112 win over the Orlando Magic at Capital One Arena on Tuesday night. And on the show, we'll discuss Georgetown Basketball. The Hoyas, they in their 2025-2026 regular season now are just 1-3 in the Big East. A 56-50 loss at DePaul on Tuesday night. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Feedback on the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury from Craig on X. Writes Craig, I don't get keeping Quinn and parting with KK if I'm Peters or ownership. Thank you for that, Craig. From Jensen on X. Writes Jensen, the more things change with this organization, the more they stay the same. Thank you for that, Jensen. From JVA on X. Writes Jay, I'm always along for the ride, but this move has me skeptical. Gotta be honest. Thank you for that, Jay. From D Darkness on X, writes D Darkness, seat has got to be flaming hot under Quinn now. Kliff and the offense are the only thing that has been any good over 2 seasons here. Wow. Thank you for that, D Darkness. From Juan on X, writes Juan, look, with Harbaugh being available, our coordinators removed, we got to start talking about the possibility of Harbaugh as a replacement for DQ, right? This is a material change to the conversation. Thank you for that, Juan. The Baltimore Ravens, they on Tuesday evening announced having fired head coach John Harbaugh, but right away the reporting was that NFL teams already with head coaching vacancies had interest in Harbaugh. He appears likely to be gobbled up quickly, so if the Commanders want John Harbaugh, they need to fire Dan Quinn now. They need to fire Dan Quinn yesterday, and I just don't see that happening. From Christopher Taylor on X, writes Christopher, ownership must be really sold on DQ's long-term vision and plan as head coach. Such a drop-off between seasons, multiple blowout losses, both OC and DC let go. Why is DQ still employed? Thank you for that, Christopher. From Commander's Hub on X, writes Commander's Hub, Kliff was fired. I'm not mincing words. Fired because his unapologetic offense puts Jaden more at risk than other systems. AP publicly stated this was Dan Quinn's decision. AP wasn't sitting around year 3 without a scheme change, watching JD5 get hurt again. Thank you for that, Commander's Hub. From Orion on X, writes Orion, the Minnesota game made me completely out on KK. The 3 pass plays from the 1-yard line was the final straw. Thank you for that, Orion. From CWZ Sports, writes CWZ, time for Daniels to run an NFL offense, not a college offense. Not being under center cost the team a game against the Bears. Felt like the turning point of the season. Thank you for that, CWZ. From Mary on X, writes Mary, it is odd. Everyone was clamoring for Kingsbury to stay last year and happy when he didn't get a head coaching job. His stock was super high last year. The team has one injury-plagued year. The offense was clearly not the biggest problem on the team, and he's gone. There is more to this. Thank you for that, Barry. That's what I've been wondering. Is there more? What more is there? What information is there that we don't currently have? It just is so strange, and I posted this on X on Tuesday afternoon, but Kliff Kingsbury, good enough to coordinate an elite 2024 offense, good enough to do an admirable job with an injury-plagued 2025 offense, good enough to be a head coaching candidate in the 2025 and 2026 offseasons, but not good enough to remain as Commanders' offensive coordinator. From Why Not Warriors on X writes, Why Not Warriors? Hoping the name is the next thing to go. Thank you for that. Why Not Warriors? Email from Rick Proctor on the Commanders' defensive coordinator search and what to do with the number 7 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Writes Rick, Al, Happy New Year to you and the family. I am not against DQ continuing to call the defense. If I were him, I'd recognize that my A may be on the line. He should consider controlling his own destiny, though if he wants to be the CEO of cheerleading anywhere, anytime, any place, ... we can lose. Jeez. Hat backwards, all the positive machismo. This is how we get down in this space. Cheerleader CEO. Then I want Jim Schwartz and or Todd Bowles as the new DC. Both very good in unique ways. Homecomings for both. We need a DC who can fight the Shanahan type of football to add to potential success for the Redskins, along with actually tackling someone and rushing the passer. We got pick 7. Who you want, Al? Who's the man? All the best. Thank you for the email, Rick. Same to you. What I most want the Commanders to do with that number 7 overall pick is trade down with a quarterback-needy team for a haul of picks. But if the Commanders stick and pick, I want them taking the best player available, period. I am not at all a believer in drafting for need. I'm a big believer in best player available. BPA all the way. But given the many needs that the Commanders have, it just may be that taking the best player available would address a need. As things stand right now, I would love to see the Commanders get one of 3 guys. One of the perceived top 2 edge defenders in the draft, Reuben Bain Jr. of Miami or David Bailey of Texas Tech, or the perceived top safety in the draft, Caleb Downs of Ohio State. But, it may not be that any of these guys are available at 7. Each guy is very well regarded. Rick brought up Todd Bowles and Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator candidates for the Commanders. I'm a big fan of each guy, but neither guy may be available. Bowles does remain the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach, and Schwartz is the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator, and if you go by what's being said and reported, he appears to be a candidate to be the Browns head coach, off them on Monday morning announcing having fired head coach Kevin Stefanski, who, by the way, might be an intriguing offensive coordinator candidate for the Commanders. If you are listening to this podcast via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can rate the podcast with a star rating. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. They help us out a lot. Thank you for doing them. So the Washington Commanders on Tuesday parted with offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury, offensive line coach Bobby Johnson, and defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. Now, the team put out no official announcement, but it's a funny thing. The coaching staff page on the Commanders' official website on Tuesday reflected these guys being gone. You no longer saw Kliff Kingsbury, Bobby Johnson, or Joe Whitt on the page. The top 2 people on the coaching staff page now are the head coach, Dan Quinn, and the special teams coordinator, Larry Izzo. Larry Izzo, the lone coordinator remaining for the Commanders. It is amazing what a disappointing season will do. The Commanders in the NFL's 2025 regular season went 5-12 with a point differential of -95, third worst record in the NFC, second worst point differential in the NFC. There as recently as this past Friday was zero inkling that Kliff Kingsbury might be out as Commanders offensive coordinator. Man, did things change over the last few days. Saturday morning, January 3rd, NFL insider Diana Rossini of The Athletic, she in a piece had the following quote, "Some in the building say there's been a disconnect between Kingsbury and general manager Adam Peters," end quote. Sunday morning, January 4th, Commanders insider Ben Standing of Last Man Standing on Substack, he in a piece wrote that on Friday evening, January 2nd, quote, "A high-ranking front office source from another organization texted that Kingsbury might not return, regardless of whether he lands another job first," end quote. Monday evening, January 5th, Dan Quinn, during a joint season-ending press conference with Commanders general manager Adam Peters, had a chance to endorse Kliff Kingsbury, or at least compliment the guy. When asked about the job that Kingsbury had done, Quinn neither endorsed nor complimented Kingsbury. Take a listen. The exchange between Commanders insider Nikki Javala of The Athletic and Dan Quinn.
Just for both of you, just looking back over this past season, how would you assess the work that Kliff did with the offense?
Yeah, we're going through all the coaches, Kliff offensively, defensively, on the teams wide. And so that's really what we're digging into, Nikki, to find what's best, how do we do it, where do we find spaces to improve. And, for Kliff, for Joe, for Larry, for all of us, that's our main focus. So we're never in this space again. And that's what we want to dig in hard on.
That was so telling. And then late Tuesday morning, the news broke that the Commanders had parted with Kliff Kingsbury. And the framing of this is parting, not firing. The reporting is that Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury on Tuesday morning met and agreed to mutually part ways. But make no mistake, this is not a mutual parting because Kliff Kingsbury definitely is about to get a head coaching job. No, this is a mutual parting rooted in the Commanders no longer wanting Kliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. The Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury on the surface makes little sense. But instead of just ripping Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, I do want to see if there's information here that we don't currently have. And I do want to see what the Commanders do at offensive coordinator. It may well be that the team already is set with its next offensive coordinator. Judging this whole ordeal before its conclusion is silly. But on the surface, the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury makes little sense. The Commanders on February 5th, 2024 announced the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator. He had spent the 2023 season as a senior offensive analyst for USC, worked with quarterback Caleb Williams in his final collegiate season. And Kingsbury, over his 2 seasons as Commanders offensive coordinator, did a good job. The Commanders in the 2024 regular season had the following offensive rankings: number 6 in the NFL in total offense in terms of DVOA, number 4 in the NFL in total offense in terms of expected points added per play per RBSDM.com, and number 10 in the NFL in yards per play. And oh, by the way, the Commanders last postseason went 2-1 with all 3 games on the road and made the NFC Championship game. The Commanders, for their injury-ravaged 2025 regular season, had the following offensive rankings: number 23 out of 32 NFL teams in total offense in terms of DVOA. Okay, but number 16 in the NFL in total offense in terms of expected points added per play per RBSDM.com, number 12 in the NFL in yards per play, and number 4 in the NFL in red zone touchdown scoring percentage. And I bring that up because of all of the complaining about Kliff Kingsbury's red zone play calling, especially off what happened in the 31-0 loss at the Minnesota Vikings on December 7th. Well, the Commanders for the 2025 regular season were number 4 in the NFL in red zone touchdown scoring percentage. I, on this podcast for weeks, had been pointing out that Kliff Kingsbury was not getting enough credit for the work that he was doing this season. In fact, you could argue that what he did this season was more impressive than what he did last season, given the circumstances. The offense this season was a shell of what the offense was supposed to be, and yet the Commanders for the 2025 regular season were in the upper half of the NFL in both EPA per play and yards per play, two of the most important offensive statistics. The QB1, Jaden Daniels, played in just 7 of the Commanders' 17 games in the 2025 regular season. The WR1, Terry McLaurin, just 10 games. The WR3, Noah Brown, just 4 games. A key running back, Austin Eckler, just 2 games. The RG1, Samuel Cosme, just 9 games. Oh, by the way, the offense got 0 help from the defense, which was hideous, and yet the Commanders for the 2025 regular season were in the upper half of the NFL in both EPA per play and yards per play. But for whatever reasons, there among Commanders fans has been this hypercriticism of Kliff Kingsbury. And I get it. Every NFL fan base complains about its offensive coordinator, no matter how well he's doing. But we as a fan base seem to take particular joy in ripping offensive coordinators who end up doing well elsewhere, especially as head coaches. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell. Now we'll see about Kliff Kingsbury. But you know what's funny? The criticism of each guy has been the same. A, he doesn't run the ball enough. B, he gets too cute. Right? How many times have you heard or read those criticisms? These things were said about Kyle Shanahan, were said about Sean McVay, were said about Kevin O'Connell, were said about Kliff Kingsbury. He doesn't run the ball enough. He gets too cute. These are the cliche criticisms of Washington offensive coordinators by fans and media members. He doesn't run the ball enough. He gets too cute. Funny how the same things keep being said about different people. Maybe the people being criticized aren't so much the problem. So what was the problem? Why did the Commanders part with Kliff Kingsbury? Well, from what I have heard and from what is being reported, this does seem to be about a philosophical difference. I don't think that it is the case that Adam Peters and Kliff Kingsbury hate each other or that Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury hate each other. I think that this is a case of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn realizing that they want to do offense one way and Kliff Kingsbury wants to do offense another way. Grant Paulson of 106.7 The Fan, he on Tuesday afternoon in a post on X wrote, quote, "I'm told Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury disagreed over several things, run-pass balance being high on the list," end quote. Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN, he on Tuesday afternoon in a post on X wrote, quote, "This move is the result of a fundamental difference between play caller and coach. It happens. Kingsbury ran a certain style of O before he arrived. Nothing changed. But there's certainly a strong desire to be a more run-oriented offense," end quote. I also think that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn may well not be in love with Kliff Kingsbury's extreme usage of no huddle. The Commanders for the 2025 regular season per Sharp Football Analysis were number 1 in the NFL in no huddle rate, 60%. Number 2 was the New Orleans Saints at 22.8%. The Commanders with Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator used no huddle offense with a frequency to which no other NFL team came close, and maybe Adam Peters and Dan Quinn did not like that, and that's fine. But you know what? I mean, who did you think that you were hiring when you hired Kliff Kingsbury? His offensive philosophy isn't exactly a secret. The guy, as a quarterback and as a coach, is known as one of the biggest proponents ever of what is called the air raid offense. His offensive philosophy could not be clearer. Why'd you hire him if you wanted a more run-oriented offense? And I guess what is the case, or at least may be the case, is that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn came to want a more run-oriented offense instead of from the get-go wanting a more run-oriented offense. And look, you are allowed to change your mind. You know, Adam Peters as an NFL GM, Dan Quinn as an NFL head coach, each guy is allowed to change his mind. But yeah, what Kliff Kingsbury believes is the proper way to do offense in football, that's no secret, okay? Like, we know who this guy is, and who he has been has worked out quite well for him. This guy has had success at a number of different spots. There's also this. The Commanders' QB1, Jaden Daniels. He seems to like Kliff Kingsbury a lot. and Daniels certainly has had a good bit of success with Kingsbury. Jaden Daniels' mom, Regina Jackson, she on Sunday evening on X, quote, posted a post from the Commanders with the following, quote, headed in the right direction, let's go, officially loading JD5/KK Season 3, 2 heart emojis, hashtag raise hail, hashtag HTTC, hashtag HTTR, end quote. Mama Daniels with a very public endorsement of the Jaden Daniels, Kliff Kingsbury tandem. And Regina Jackson, she's a smart woman, okay? I promise you, what she posted on X on Sunday evening, that was not by accident. Jaden Daniels, he during his season-ending session with reporters on Monday morning said that he and Kliff Kingsbury have, quote, a special relationship, end quote. And then we had this. NFL insider Jordan Schultz, he on Tuesday afternoon in a post on X wrote, quote, sources, my understanding is that key Commanders offensive players, including QB Jaden Daniels, are disappointed with the team's decision to part ways with OC Kliff Kingsbury. Daniels vouched for him to stay in his presser on Monday and was among those blindsided by the move. Offensive players on the team figured the only way Kingsbury would be gone is if he got a HC job, end quote. HC, of course, standing for head coaching. So, at least according to Jordan Schultz, Commanders offensive players, including Jaden Daniels, are disappointed with the team's decision to part with Kliff Kingsbury, and Schultz noted that Jaden Daniels was blindsided by the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury. Washington's best ranking in total offense per DVOA for a regular season over the previous 6 regular seasons prior to hiring Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator was number 21 for the 2021 regular season. The following were Washington's NFL rankings in total offense per DVOA for each of the team's 4 regular seasons with Ron Rivera as head coach. 2020, number 31. 2021, number 21. 2022, number 30. 2023, number 26. Washington last season with Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator had offensive success, the likes of which the franchise had not had in years. And yes, of course, so much of that success was due to Jaden Daniels having an all-time great rookie season. But Kingsbury deserves credit too. And he this season did a good job given the circumstances, and Daniels likes working with Kingsbury. And so there better be a lot more to this situation than we know. Let's see what happens next. I am open to Adam Peters and Dan Quinn potentially having someone better than Kliff Kingsbury in mind as offensive coordinator, but this entire situation on the surface is hard to understand. Nova Fireplace and Stove. It is Northern Virginia's go-to expert for fireplaces. Transform the look and feel of your home and increase its value by visiting Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or by visiting NovaFireplaceandStove.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. Come in and see Nova Fireplace and Stove's stunning displays, including custom fireplace glass doors and stone refacing options that can completely transform the look of your fireplace from sleek and modern to rustic and cozy. Nova Fireplace and Stove has something for every style, and here's what else Nova Fireplace and Stove offers: gas fireplace service and repair, chimney cleaning and brickwork repair, generator installation, panel replacements and water heater repairs, smoke detectors, security lights, and more. Nova Fireplace and Stove is a family-owned, fully licensed and insured company with over-the-top credentials, a gas and electrical master's licenses, a Class A contractor's license, and a long list of 5-star reviews to back all of this up. Every job includes a free in-home estimate, and for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast, Nova Fireplace and Stove is offering $25 off any service. Just mention this ad. Nova Fireplace and Stove only works in Northern Virginia and thus knows the homes, the codes, and the people. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. That's Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or NovaFireplaceandStove.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. The lead story on ESPN's NFL Live on Tuesday afternoon was the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury. This was ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, and then you'll hear ESPN NFL analyst Marcus Spears.
I'm shocked that Kliff Kingsbury left Washington. Now we'll see why. If that comes out, is he going to become a head coach? Obviously, that would be a different conversation. But if he's leaving just to leave, this is a pretty significant move for Washington. And I would tell you that it's now the most pivotal decision that will be made in the NFL when it comes to the offseason and what the 2026 season looks like.
Whoa.
Jaden and this team took a significant step backwards this year, and there was a lot of reasons why. But who's going to replace Kliff Kingsbury? Because the third year for the rookie quarterback is the expected year of, hey, there comes this big jump. And there's some pieces that Washington needs outside of just that, but who's going to fill that role to take Jaden and this offense to the next level? Throw out names. Josh McCown from Minnesota. Is he ready to take the next step? Grant Udinsky, who's the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, does he want to go become his own play caller? Davis Webb, who's in Denver as the quarterback coach, does he take that next step? And then maybe Mike LaFleur, who had to stop Matt's little brother with the New York Jets, now in LA. Like, those are names right now that I think have to be at the top of a list.
I'm glad you went with names, Dan, because it feels weird to me. I think weird is the word that I would associate that with. Unless Kliff Kingsbury went into the office of Dan and said, look, man, I want to try to become a head coach again, and the only way I'm going to do that if I leave this position. Now, again, you look at the record and the graphic that Phil just read off, babyface, and it was a lot of success. The injuries are a big part of the loss column for Jaden Daniels as well, not having him for a large majority of some of these seasons. So that's the first thing I thought, just weird. And I know it went bad in Washington this year, which I put more on Jaden not being available and some things obviously around him. But the only thing that I could come up with is Kliff wanted to go become a head coach in this cycle where so many jobs opened up, and felt like the only way he could do it was to get out of this right now so he could start interviewing. But I thought you could do that anyway, and they would grant him permission to do so. So it just feels weird. That's the word I would associate with it.
There are so many possibilities for who could be next for the Commanders at offensive coordinator, but I really wonder if what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn are thinking is, let's get a guy who runs a Shanahan-style offense. Let's get us a Shanahan guy. Adam Peters worked for the San Francisco 49ers from January 2017 to January 2024. He was their vice president of player personnel January 2017 to February 2021. He was their assistant general manager February 2021 to January 2024. Former Redskins offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan has been the Niners head coach since February 2017. So Adam Peters worked with Kyle Shanahan for years. And Kyle Shanahan, prior to being Niners head coach, was Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator from January 2015 to February 2017. The Falcons head coach during that time was Dan Quinn. The Commanders going with an offensive coordinator who runs a Shanahan-style offense would explain the team on Tuesday parting with offensive line coach Bobby Johnson. At first glance, the Commanders parting with Johnson makes no sense, given that the team's biggest strength this season by far was the offensive line. I mean, how many times as the season went on did we talk about the offensive line and how that was a bright spot in this otherwise oh-so-dismal season for our team? But the Commanders parting with Bobby Johnson does start to make sense if the team is going in the direction of a Shanahan-style offense. So the Commanders parting with Johnson also starts to make sense if they are about to hire Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator. Daboll's name is coming up. The New York Giants on November 12th announced having fired Daboll as head coach. So the Giants in January 2024, with Daboll as head coach, fired Bobby Johnson as offensive line coach. More on the Commanders parting with Kliff Kingsbury and what's next. Here was ESPN NFL analyst Mina Kimes on ESPN's NFL Live on Tuesday afternoon, and then we'll hear Dan Orlovsky chime in.
Yeah, part of the reason why I wouldn't love this if I was a Washington fan is there are not many offensive names available, right? Like Dan was listing names. Basically, a lot of those guys are offensive coordinators who don't get to call plays, which maybe could work out. It's a bit of a mystery. Obviously, some of the McVay guys have worked out. But we're going to talk about head coaching jobs and head coaching opportunities as this show goes along. I have been hard-pressed to come out with offensive options. There's a lot of really good defensive coaches. This is a bad time to need an offensive play caller in general, I think. As far as what happened in Washington and sort of the job that somebody would be taking. I put it much more on the roster and, frankly, the GM than I do on coaches on both sides of the ball, honestly. Injuries, of course, are not the GM's fault, but this was a very old roster. We knew this coming in. They bet all in on it. And as much as you like the quarterback, I think the offensive line has some good pieces, and you love McLaurin. Outside of that,
Totally.
They got to get younger on offense. So whoever takes this job and understanding the point what you're getting in McDaniel or probably in Jay Daniels and whatnot, you also hope, I think, that they would add some youth on that side of the ball because they really need it.
It's an enormous hire. It really is, man. This is a special quarterback, a special player, and you either are going to completely halt where he is or you're going to take him to the next level. It's an enormous hire.
Yes, it is. I completely agree with that. As for the Commanders firing defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr., so this, of course, was not surprising at all. The team demoted Whitt nearly 2 months ago. Dan Quinn on November 10th announced having taken over as the team's defensive coordinator. Whitt's formal title never changed, but his role with the team did. When Quinn took over as defensive coordinator, said that Whitt was as good as gone, and now he is gone. The Commanders on February 5th, 2024 announced the hiring of Whitt as defensive coordinator. He was the Dallas Cowboys secondary coach and defensive passing game coordinator January 2021 to February 2024. That span coincided precisely with Dan Quinn's time as Cowboys defensive coordinator. Quinn hiring Whitt as defensive coordinator was reported almost immediately after the Commanders hired Quinn. He very clearly identified Whitt as the DC. And, Whitt as DC did not work out. The Commanders for the 2024 regular season had the following defensive rankings: number 23 out of 32 NFL teams in total defense in terms of DVOA, number 22 out of 32 NFL teams in total defense in terms of expected points added per play per RBSDM.com. The Commanders for the 2025 regular season had the following defensive rankings: number 28 out of 32 NFL teams in total defense in terms of DVOA, number 31 out of 32 NFL teams in total defense in terms of expected points added per play per RBSDM.com. Yes, the defense this season got hit hard by injuries, but also, yes, the defense this season was atrocious and likely would have been bad even with, say, league average health. The injuries didn't help, but you are being way too charitable if you say that the defense would have been good if not for the injuries. The defense this season was so bad, if you spent 30 seconds watching any Commanders game, you came to realize that. Gonna be fascinating to see which path the Commanders take at defensive coordinator. You know that they're not promoting someone from within to be defensive coordinator. It is possible the Commanders promote someone from within to be offensive coordinator. I don't think that would get people super excited, although, I would say this isn't about generating excitement. This is about doing what's right. But you know that the Commanders are not promoting someone from within to be defensive coordinator. But do they hire someone with whom Dan Quinn has no history? Do they hire someone with whom Dan Quinn has a past and great familiarity? Do they have Quinn remain as defensive coordinator? Adam Peters on Monday evening said that the defensive coordinator hire is a Dan Quinn call. Now, I don't know that anybody believes that Peters, who is in charge of Commanders football operations, has no input on what is done at defensive coordinator, but Peters on Monday evening did say that the defensive coordinator hire is a Dan Quinn call. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider J.P. Finley of NBC4 and Adam Peters, and then we'll hear Dan Quinn chime in.
You guys talk about your comprehensive approach a lot. Adam, I'm curious, what's your role in the coaching staff decisions?
I'm really just here to support DQ. The coaching staff is DQ's, and I'm always here to help, like during the season and off season, however I can, to help support him and help him make the decisions that he needs to make, and certainly wherever he needs. So it's not, I'm not involved in whatever decision it is. It's always DQ's call, and I have his back on whatever he wants to do.
There's not silos here, JP, coaching and scouts. We connect, we talk a lot, we visit a lot, and so it's one of the things I enjoy most is those conversations. It's different perspective, different points of view, so it's as collaborative as I've been a part of.
Yeah.
Let's make something very clear about Dan Quinn. His employment as Commanders head coach hinges on who he hires as offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. His initial choice for Commanders defensive coordinator lasted for less than 2 seasons. His initial choice for Commanders offensive coordinator lasted for just 2 seasons. If Quinn is truly leading these latest coordinator hirings and he gets them wrong, then he won't be making any more coordinator hirings for the Commanders. It is amazing how Dan Quinn has gone from being a Coach of the Year candidate a year ago to now being on the hot seat, but that would appear to be the case. And it is amazing how one of the best aspects of the Commanders' 2025 offseason, their coaching staff continuity, remember that, now has been blown up. Things in the NFL change quickly. When it comes to what could be next for Kliff Kingsbury, so we on Tuesday evening had the big news that the Baltimore Ravens had fired head coach John Harbaugh. What a run for him, right? 18 seasons as Ravens head coach, 12 playoff appearances, so won the Super Bowl for the 2012 season. But Diana Rossini, she in a post on X on Tuesday evening had this, quote, amid recent league-wide buzz about Kliff Kingsbury's future, many believe Baltimore, paired with Lamar Jackson, would be an ideal landing spot for the now former Commanders offensive coordinator. That will be a name to watch, end quote. How possible is it that Kliff Kingsbury is about to go from Commanders offensive coordinator to Ravens head coach? How wild would that be? How possible is it that Kliff Kingsbury is about to go from having Jaden Daniels as QB1 to Lamar Jackson as QB1? Bet Online on Tuesday evening had Kingsbury with the 3rd best odds to become Ravens head coach, 5-1. Something else to watch here is what happens with Commanders assistant quarterbacks coach David Blau, who has served as the team's quarterbacks coach since Tavita Pritchard left to become Stanford's head coach. Stanford on November 28th announced having hired Pritchard as head coach. So first of all, David Blau is considered to be tight with Kliff Kingsbury, but also Blau is coming up for the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator vacancy. The Lions, they on Tuesday evening announced having fired offensive coordinator John Morton. NFL insider Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, he in a post on X on Tuesday evening had this, quote, the Lions have started off their OC search with an intriguing name, David Blau, a former Detroit QB. Blau was assistant QB's coach with the Commanders, but did the QB coach job after Tavita Pritchard left. A sneaky, hot name, end quote. So we on this podcast have been talking about David Blau as a potential offensive coordinator successor for Kliff Kingsbury for about a year now. Blau is viewed as a rising offensive mind in the NFL. He has only been a coach for 2 seasons. That is true. But you know what? If you're good, you're good. And my concern here is that the Commanders could lose a smart and rising offensive assistant in David Blau via this apparent desire for a more run-oriented offense. I mean, just saying that phrase, more run-oriented offense, that just sounds so antiquated. But in fairness to Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, I do want to hear what they have to say about the direction of the offense. But, you know, you think about Jaden Daniels. It's already the case that his offensive coordinator in Kliff Kingsbury and quarterbacks coach in Tavita Pritchard are gone. Now is the assistant quarterbacks coach, David Blau, about to be gone. Again, it is amazing how one of the best aspects of the Commanders' 2025 offseason, their coaching staff continuity, now has been blown up. Things in the NFL change quickly. Hey, if you are planning a wedding or you know someone who is, check out or have that person check out cateringbyuptown.com. Catering by Uptown delivers not just delicious food of the highest quality, but also a flawless and memorable experience tailored to your special day. Catering by Uptown's team is dedicated to meeting your every need with elegance and precision. And if you visit cateringbyuptown.com and click on venues, you can set up your own personal tour of one of Catering by Uptown's premier venues, including outstanding waterfront venues. So also, Catering by Uptown is great for parties, so whether a birthday, an anniversary, a retirement, or a charity gala, Catering Catering by Uptown understands that special events deserve to be celebrated in style. Catering by Uptown takes care of every detail so that you can enjoy your event. Catering by Uptown is a family business. It is run by the Pereiras, who are great Commanders fans and loyal supporters of this podcast. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. That's cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. Another win for the rebuilding and tanking Washington Wizards, who right now are not doing such a good job of tanking. But you know what? They're showing signs that the rebuild is working. And as someone who is a Washington Bullets / Washington Wizards fan, and always will be a Washington Bullets / Washington Wizards fan, I want the rebuild to work. And so it is so good to see signs that the rebuild is working. The Wizards now are 7-5 over their last 12 games, a 120-112 win over the Orlando Magic at Capital One Arena on Tuesday night. The Wizards in the NBA's 2025-2026 regular season now are 10-25. They have gone from 3-20 to 10-25, and this is happening despite the Wizards being without one of their best players. Keyshawn George did not play for a 6th consecutive game due to left hip flexor soreness. Also, Cam Whitmore was not available for a 10th consecutive game, this due to upper extremity deep vein thrombosis, and Corey Kispert did not play due to left hamstring injury management, but the Wizards won. They led for all of the second, third, and fourth quarters, so though the Wizards did allow a 26-point third quarter lead to get trimmed to just 2 points in the fourth quarter. The Wizards' offense was mixed. They went just 11 for 34 on threes and committed 15 turnovers, but also went 28 for 52 on twos and went an outstanding 31 for 33 on free throws. The Magic went just 16 for 24 on free throws. So the Wizards outscored the Magic in terms of free throw points 31-16. The Wizards' defense is pretty good. They allowed the Magic to go 12 for 33 on threes, but held the Magic to 30 for 59 on twos and totaled 12 steals and generating 19 Magic turnovers. Very good performances from two key young Wizards in Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly. Alex Sarr, in 30 minutes, 55 seconds as a starter, had 23 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, 2 assists versus 1 turnover, and a game-best tying plus-minus rating of plus 23. He went 2 for 5 on threes, 5 for 9 on twos, and 7 for 7 on free throws. But man, those 5 blocks were huge. Sarr's rim protection as the game went on was so key. And Bilal Coulibaly, he in 34-03 as a starter, had 14 points, 8 rebounds, including 3 offensive boards, 5 steals, 3 assists versus 2 turnovers, and a game-best tying plus-minus rating of plus 23. He went 1 for 3 on threes, 3 for 5 on twos, and 5 for 6 on free throws. And Coulibaly played well defensively in being matched up with the Magic's best player, 6'10" Paolo Banchero, who the Magic took with the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft out of Duke. Banchero, in 24-32 as a starter, had 14 points, just 4 rebounds, and 4 assists versus 4 turnovers. He went 1 for 3 on threes, 4 for 7 on twos, and just 3 for 5 on free throws. But regarding Bilal Coulibaly, I found this interesting from the post-game press conference of Wizards head coach Brian Keefe on Tuesday night. Take a listen to this exchange between David Aldridge of The Athletic and Keefe.
Brian, you think Bilal's shot or his shot diet is finding the places where he can be most effective?
Yeah, I think so. We want him initiating and handling into our offense, and then he's obviously finding the corners, but it's the attacking, like the free throws are up. That's what we want him, downhill, attacking, in transition, putting pressure on the rim. I think that this last stretch of 10 so games, like his free throws are pretty high, and that's what we want him. Is this he can be so aggressive. It's a game changer for us because we aren't a high free throw team. I think we had 33 tonight, but he can just put pressure on that rim. I really like how he's attacking.
All right. The Wizards' leading scorer in this win over the Magic on Tuesday night was C.J. McCollum. He, in 38-10 as a starter, had 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists versus 2 turnovers. He went 3 for 7 on threes, 8 for 12 on twos, and 2 for 2 on free throws. This as we have all kinds of talk that McCollum soon could be traded. NBA insider Mark Stein of the Stein Line on Substack, he on Monday afternoon reported that the Wizards had emerged as a legitimate potential trade destination for Atlanta's Trae Young. The trade would feature McCollum, who has an expiring contract. Young is under contract through next season via a 5-year Supermax contract, though he could opt out of the contract this coming offseason, but the Wizards could take on that contract, presumably for draft capital, as they are set to have a ton of salary cap space next season. I hope that the Wizards make this trade. The more draft capital, the better. Another standout for the Wizards in this win over the Magic on Tuesday night was Justin Champagnie. He in 22-11 off the bench had 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists versus 1 turnover and 2 blocks. He went 4 for 5 on threes, 2 for 2 on twos, and 1 for 2 on free throws. Wizards head coach Brian Keefe has this team playing well. Here were the first 2 exchanges of his postgame press conference on Tuesday night.
Brian, that fourth quarter extended run going back to the third 25-8 run by them, what did it take from a mental standpoint from you all? Because it was one of those times where you have a scoring drought, but the defense continued to just grind it out.
I think that's the thing that is the point of the whole game, is that sometimes you're going to have runs like that. That stuff happens. You don't want it to, but our defense carried out. You can see the impact Bilal had on the game. I think he had 5 steals, but he's just all over the place. And then obviously Alex coming back in and just swallowing up the rim, protecting it, the shot blocking. But we were forcing turnovers, and that really got our game going. Had just a little tough stretch there, but then we finished off with playing defense again. And we're learning we can hang our hat on that. That's really good.
You mentioned Alex's shot blocking. He had, specifically in that clutch time, those 2 back-to-back. One seemed like it was just a grazing tip, but then he had that big one on Bataze, which ended up in the jump ball. Just his ability to quickly react the way he does. How has he grown in that area?
I think he's just seeing and processing things even quicker. We want him to keep attacking. I think he has room to grow too, which is amazing to say, what he's doing out there already for a guy his age. But it just anchors our whole thing. We got great confidence in him that if there's a breakdown that he's going to be there, and he just keeps being there over and over again. It's impressive for a guy him, and he's going to keep pushing, but it's something there. That's really cool. Really cool to see.
Well, the Wizards' last regular season needed 57 games to get to 10 wins, so the Wizards in this regular season needed 35 games to get to 10 wins. We call that progress. Next up for the Wizards at the Philadelphia 76ers, Wednesday night at 7. Let's talk college basketball. Ugly performance by Georgetown offensively on Tuesday night. The Hoyas in the 2025-2026 regular season fell to 9-6 overall, including 1-3 in the Big East, with a 56-50 loss at DePaul. Georgetown scored just the 50 points, went just 1 for 12 on threes, and just 11 for 41 on twos, and had just 4 assists versus 13 turnovers. Those are some brutal offensive numbers. I mean, the Hoyas for the game, 4 assists. That says a lot. Georgetown's defense was good. The Hoyas allowed DePaul to go 7 for 20 on threes, but just 11 for 31 on twos, and totaled 9 steals and generating 15 DePaul turnovers. Georgetown lost despite going 25 for 31 on free throws versus DePaul going just 13 for 21 on free throws. Georgetown's leading scorer was 6'4" Arizona transfer KJ Lewis. He in 31 minutes as a starter had 18 points, 7 rebounds, including 3 offensive boards and no assists versus 2 turnovers. He went 0 for 2 on threes, just 5 for 15 on twos, and 8 for 11 on free throws. The best part about this game from a Georgetown perspective is that Vince Iwuchukwu was back. Vince Iwuchukwu, 7'1" St. John's transfer. He returned from a 10-game absence caused by an undisclosed medical issue. He in 20 minutes off the bench had 2 points, 4 blocks, 3 steals, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist versus 3 turnovers. He went 0 for 1 on threes and 1 for 4 on twos, did not attempt a free throw. Georgetown on November 18th announced that Iwuchukwu was to, quote, undergo a scheduled medical procedure, end quote, and would, quote, take a brief recovery period with a follow-up evaluation expected within 6 to 8 weeks, end quote. A concerning situation, but now he's back. Great to see that. Next up for Georgetown, home to Seton Hall, Saturday evening at 6. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Thursday's show, episode 1234, will provide you with more on the Washington Commanders. Also on Thursday's show, I'll talk Washington Capitals, Washington Wizards, and college basketball. The Caps are home to the Dallas Stars Wednesday night at 7. The Wizards are at the Philadelphia 76ers Wednesday night at 7. Maryland is home to Indiana Wednesday evening at 6:30. Number 23 Virginia is home to Cal Wednesday night at 9, and Virginia Tech is home to Stanford Wednesday night at 7. Wednesday night, a busy night. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.
It's an enormous hire. It really is, man. This is a special quarterback, a special player, and you either are going to completely halt where he is or you're going to take him to the next level. It's an enormous hire.